Have you ever felt like life handed you a script that just doesn't fit? Society promises that happiness, success, and love are right around the corner, but what if those promises were built on myths? In this powerful video, we're about to shatter some deeply held illusions and uncover eye-opening truths that will change the way you see yourself and the world around you. If you've been feeling stuck, drained, or simply looking for more out of life, stick around to discover how stepping beyond comfort, releasing unrealistic expectations, and breaking free from societal norms can truly set you free. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us create more inspiring, thought-provoking stories that get to the heart of what really matters. Life has a way of lulling us into a comfortable slumber, feeding us beliefs that appear so self-evident we rarely stop to question them. We're told that happiness should be our ultimate pursuit, that success is measured by the depth of our pockets and the lofty titles on our business cards, and that the only way to feel complete is to find someone else to complete us. These notions are woven into the very fabric of our social landscape, constantly broadcasted through marketing campaigns, entertainment, and even well-meaning advice from family and friends. Yet, beneath this veneer of positivity lies a stark and unsettling truth. Most of what we accept about happiness, success, and love is misguided, incomplete, or simply untrue. We absorb these narratives early on and carry them throughout our lives, often without pausing to reflect on where they came from or whether they genuinely serve us. When we take a closer look, we discover that these conventional ideas can lead to emptiness rather than fulfillment. We follow rules and chase goals that were never truly ours, and in doing so, we lose touch with our innate sense of purpose. Our society has become adept at glorifying short-term pleasure over long-term growth, hollow accolades over deep satisfaction, and surface-level connections over profound understanding. People, unfortunately, are more anxious and isolated now than ever before, even though we have technology that claims to keep us connected. We scroll through social media feeds that bombard us with images of idealized lifestyles and relationships, creating unrealistic benchmarks for ourselves. Anxiety spikes when we can't keep up with these illusions, and we often wonder what went wrong with our lives, when in reality it's the narrative itself that is deeply flawed. Stoicism, often misunderstood as a dull or emotionless philosophy, provides a potent antidote to these modern maladies. Instead of teaching us to suppress our emotions, it guides us to question our assumptions and face the world with clarity. Stoics would remind us that very little is under our complete control, that external circumstances may not bend to our will, and that real happiness depends far more on our inner state than on our external possessions. However, truly embracing such a perspective requires an uncomfortable shift. It necessitates letting go of convenient fictions and confronting the aspects of ourselves and our world that we'd rather ignore. This is not about chasing a sugar-coated version of personal development. It is about raw, sometimes disconcerting self-honesty that can feel like a jolt to our system. It's in this spirit that the truths presented here serve as a kind of rude awakening. They are meant to strip away the illusions we cherish most, leaving us with a stark and liberating realism. Each lesson acts like a spotlight, illuminating a corner of life we usually leave in the dark. You might bristle at these insights or feel compelled to argue against them. That's entirely natural. Our minds resist what disrupts the status quo. Nevertheless, if you genuinely aspire to live with meaning and intent, this brutal honesty can guide you. In a sense, these lessons are not polite suggestions or optimistic slogans. They're more like the resounding toll of a bell that demands we open our eyes and truly see. They challenge us to move beyond complacency and consider the deeper dimensions of our existence, setting the stage for genuine personal evolution. Before diving into the specific lessons, consider what it means to be truly awake in your daily life. Many of us move from one day to the next in a semi-conscious haze, reacting to events rather than actively shaping them. We focus on superficial achievements, accumulating money, attaining social recognition, or finding fleeting romance. None of those pursuits are inherently wrong, but the problem arises when we make them the sole benchmarks of success. This approach leads to chasing illusions, the illusion that financial wealth automatically equates to happiness, the illusion that constant busyness equals productivity, or the illusion that external affection can fill a gap within our very being. Anxiety flourishes in this environment because our sense of self-worth becomes tethered to external factors, variables that shift and evolve beyond our control. We toil ceaselessly for a promotion, and when it doesn't materialize, we collapse into self-doubt. We bend over backward to sustain an image on social media, and when the likes or comments are fewer than anticipated, we feel rejected. Meanwhile, genuine human connections, personal well-being, and the richness of introspection are gradually overshadowed by these misguided validations. The irony is that modern society often glamorizes this way of living, persuading us that it is the inevitable path and that any deviations are marks of failure or laziness. Stoic philosophy cuts through this fog by emphasizing that the only genuine control we have is over our own minds, our thoughts, responses, and personal values. Everything else is ephemeral and therefore cannot be reliably depended upon for lasting contentment. Yet relinquishing the illusion of control is daunting. We are used to believing that a deliberate effort in the right direction will guarantee the outcome we desire. If we are good enough, hardworking enough, or lovable enough, life will unfold precisely how we imagined. Life, however, is not obliged to meet those demands. The weather doesn't shift at our command, other people don't always match our expectations, and external events happen with indifference to our preferences. This is precisely why the upcoming lessons can feel both uncomfortable and transformative. They point out the paradoxes within our conditioned ways of thinking. They ask us to embrace discomfort as a catalyst for growth, to release the suffocating grip of unrealistic expectations, to recognize that relationships, whether romantic or platonic, are often transient, to understand that sacrifice underpins genuine achievement, to let love find us rather than chase it in desperation, to question mainstream beliefs, even when everyone around us seems convinced, and to harness patience as a superpower in a world consumed by urgency. Each insight simultaneously dismantles a common misconception and introduces a principle that can realign us with a more grounded approach to living. These lessons, drawn from a blend of ancient wisdom and modern reflections, are not steps in a tidy how-to guide. They won't magically solve every problem in your life. Instead, they serve as windows through which you can observe the underlying mechanics of your assumptions and behaviors. When you stop accepting surface-level narratives and venture deeper, you might find that growth, fulfillment, and resilience naturally emerge. Embracing these lessons is not a passive act. It involves active questioning, a willingness to confront discomfort, and the courage to stand outside the warmth of conformity. It is an invitation to see the world and yourself more authentically. Let's begin with what might be the most jarring statement of all: your comfort zone is your coffin. This statement is not intended to be melodramatic. Rather, it's meant to underline how stagnation and complacency slowly smother our potential. Too often, the narrative we hear is that the goal of a good life is unwavering comfort and security. With this mindset, we plan for the most predictable job, strive for stable relationships without friction, and avoid risks that might jeopardize our sense of safety. Yet by doing so, we often trade away the dynamism and growth that come from confronting challenges head-on. When you think about it, many of the people who inspire us, visionary leaders, groundbreaking artists, intrepid explorers, did not ascend to their accomplishments by clinging to comfort. They ventured into uncertainty, faced possible failure, and expanded their capabilities precisely because they were willing to risk. Comfort itself can act like a narcotic. It soothes you into believing that everything is fine, that you've reached a plateau that no longer requires struggle. But real life is inherently in flux, and refusing to evolve is tantamount to sliding backward. By equating safety with success, you might remain stuck in jobs, relationships, or lifestyles that do not serve your deeper aspiration. Consider the idea that fear is often a signpost rather than an obstacle. Where there is fear, there is also the potential for growth. We resist new experiences because they provoke anxiety, but that same anxiety can be a clue that something transformative lies on the other side. Your comfort zone, while it might feel reassuring, can become a cage. It locks you into familiar routines that yield predictable results, and over time, those results become increasingly unfulfilling. Breaking out requires conscious effort, perhaps starting with minor steps, like taking on a new personal challenge or voicing an unpopular opinion in a group setting. Gradually, these small acts of bravery accumulate into a profound shift in your perspective. You begin to realize that discomfort is less a threat and more an opportunity. My own life pivoted dramatically the day I decided to walk away from a stable job that felt like spiritual quicksand. On paper, it offered financial security and social prestige, yet my day-to-day reality was a persistent sense of dread. I feared the monotony, feared the absence of creative growth, and, most of all, feared that I was wasting my potential. The discomfort of leaving that job was overwhelming, but in hindsight, it was a crucial step toward aligning my work with my value. Though I went through financial insecurity and a flurry of self-doubt, each challenge sharpened my focus and helped me better understand what I truly wanted out of life. When you regard your comfort zone as a coffin, you shift your mindset from seeking safety to seeking vitality. You allow yourself to be shaped by life's trials rather than attempting to sidestep them. The point is not to adopt a reckless lifestyle, leaping from one hazard to another, but to challenge yourself consistently and avoid languishing in the tepid waters of complacency. Only through embracing calculated risk and sustained effort do we unlock our latent capacities, thereby evolving into more resilient and authentic versions of ourselves. Next, let's address one of the most insidious barriers to peace of mind. Expectation is the root of misery. At first glance, this might sound peculiar. Aren't we supposed to have goals, standards, and aspirations? Indeed, goals and standards can offer direction and motivation. The trouble begins when our expectations metastasize into rigid demands on how life must unfold. We begin to measure our worth based on external outcomes. If we don't get the promotion, if our relationship doesn't match the idyllic version we envisioned, or if our daily life doesn't align precisely with the script in our minds, we label ourselves failures. We lose sight of the fact that life operates on its own timeline, influenced by countless variables outside our sphere of control. Consider how frustration often arises. You anticipate that a friend will respond to your message immediately, but they don't. You expect to close a business deal, but it falls through. You assume you'll be married by a certain age, but it doesn't happen. Disappointment seeps in whenever the external world refuses to conform to our internal script. And this isn't to say we shouldn't aspire or plan. Rather, the wisdom lies in holding these aspirations loosely, acknowledging that outcomes can, and often will, veer from the path we chart. This viewpoint aligns with the core Stoic principle that serenity originates from focusing on what is within our control, our actions, intentions, and choices. while relinquishing attachment to what we cannot control, other people's reactions, the availability of opportunities, or random twists of fate. When we tether our sense of success or well-being to factors beyond our direct influence, we open the door to despair. Conversely, if we concentrate on aligning our actions with our values and effort, the actual outcome becomes secondary. Ironically, this can lead to better results in the long run because our mindset is driven by authenticity and resilience rather than fear of failure or rigid expectation. My own life underwent a substantial transformation when I realized how many of my disappointments stemmed from unexamined expectations. I used to believe I deserved certain professional accolades by a particular age, or that close friends should react in a specific manner to my problems. Whenever reality contradicted these preconceived notions, I felt resentment boiling up inside me. But once I started recognizing that my feelings of misery were directly tied to internal demands, I found relief in letting those demands go. This shift allowed me to appreciate life's gifts, even the imperfect ones, and adapt more gracefully to surprises. One practical way to loosen the grip of expectations is to replace the phrase "I expect" with "I hope" or "I am working toward." This subtle linguistic change can facilitate a mental shift from demanding an outcome to acknowledging it as a possibility. Another strategy is to practice daily reflection, jotting down instances where your rigidity led to disappointment. Over time, you'll discover a pattern. The tighter you cling to a specific outcome, the more vulnerable you become to disillusionment. Gradually releasing these expectations is not about giving up on your dreams. It's about recognizing that your inner peace should never hinge on the external world's compliance. Moving forward, we arrive at a truth that can be especially painful for many. Friends are not forever. This concept cuts against our cultural storytelling, where we are taught to believe that true friends remain by our side indefinitely, unwavering in loyalty. While some friendships do stand the test of time, the reality is that most evolve or dissolve due to changing circumstances, emotional growth, or diverging life paths. Acceptance of this impermanence does not negate the value of the bond. It simply acknowledges a universal principle: nothing in life remains static. Reflect on your past. You might have had a childhood friend with whom you shared countless adventures, someone you believed would be central to your life story forever. Yet, over the years, interests shifted, moves happened, careers took different trajectories, and you found yourselves drifting apart. The inclination to label this as a failed friendship is a product of the expectation that relationships should mirror unshakable mountains. But if we view friendships more like rivers, constantly flowing and adjusting course, we can appreciate the experiences shared without feeling betrayed when the paths diverge. This perspective lifts an enormous weight off our shoulders. Instead of clinging to friendships out of nostalgia or a sense of obligation, we learn to celebrate what those relationships once offered and respect the process of change. If the bond continues, that's a gift. If it fades, that can be a sign that both parties are growing in different but equally valid directions. Letting go of the myth of perpetual friendship can alleviate the guilt we sometimes feel when a relationship diminishes. It also reduces resentment when a friend appears to drift away, focusing instead on gratitude for the period during which the friendship thrived. For instance, I vividly recall a close friend from college. We were inseparable, dreaming about future successes and confiding in each other during heartbreaks. Several years post-graduation, we moved to different cities. Our calls and messages became infrequent. Initially, I blamed myself, or sometimes blamed him, for not trying hard enough. But slowly I recognized that our lives had naturally branched out. Rather than lament the loss, I found solace in remembering how central that friendship had been during a formative chapter of my life. Accepting that it was no longer the same allowed me to appreciate its impact without bitterness or guilt. The key to navigating the impermanence of friendship lies in quality over quantity. Shallow, scattered friendships can distract from deeper, more meaningful bonds. Choose to nurture relationships that truly matter and accept that others may have run their course. This doesn't mean burning bridges or cutting people out arbitrarily, but simply recognizing when mutual growth has made the connection less relevant. Embrace a form of friendship minimalism. Devote your time and energy to those who align with your evolving values and respect your growth. By doing so, you remain open to forming new bonds with those who enter your life, while also holding space for the natural ebb and flow of the relationships you already have. At this juncture, we encounter a principle often overlooked in our comfort-obsessed culture. Sacrifice is essential. A prevalent misconception is that we can have it all, every desire fulfilled, every comfort maintained, without any trade-offs. Advertising amplifies this fantasy, suggesting that the right product, program, or life hack will help us achieve limitless success without breaking a sweat. The Stoics, and many other philosophical and spiritual traditions, argue the opposite. Meaningful achievements often require letting go of something valuable, whether it be time, immediate pleasure, or personal security. Sacrifice doesn't necessarily imply grand gestures. It can manifest in smaller daily choices, such as forgoing an hour of leisure to study a new skill, or declining a tempting social invitation to focus on a long-term project that matters deeply to you. When you consciously choose what to sacrifice, you demonstrate commitment to a goal or value that transcends instant gratification. This act of prioritization not only clarifies what truly matters to you, but also strengthens your resolve. When the path becomes difficult, and it inevitably will, you can look back and see how much you've already invested. That very investment can be what sustains your perseverance. Take the example of someone training for a marathon. They sacrifice extra sleep, comfort, and perhaps the ease of indulging in unhealthy foods. The reward is not merely crossing the finish line, but also experiencing incremental improvements in discipline, resilience, and self-esteem. The sacrifices along the way shape the person into a more capable runner, and, in many cases, a more focused individual overall. Similarly, starting a business, pursuing higher education, or raising a family all involve substantial sacrifices of time, personal freedom, and financial resources. Yet, these sacrifices are not losses in the grand scheme. They are strategic investments in the life you envision. On a personal note, I recall a period when I decided to leave a lucrative job that was draining my creative energy. The immediate sacrifice was obvious: a stable paycheck and a recognized title. Friends and family questioned my decision, concerned that I was discarding security for an uncertain venture. However, that bold shift allowed me the space to develop projects aligned with my passions. Initially, the financial instability was nerve-wracking, but the personal growth and sense of purpose I gained were invaluable. Over time, I also found new revenue streams that were more fulfilling. The sacrifice became a catalyst for transformation, proving that without letting go of certain attachments, we remain tethered to a version of life that no longer fits us. In a world obsessed with getting without giving, embracing sacrifice as a part of growth stands out as a radical but necessary act. Recognizing that we cannot cling to comfort and simultaneously stretch our boundaries allows us to mature. We often shy away from sacrifice because it confronts us with the idea of loss. However, in many cases, what we relinquish is far less significant than what we stand to gain. By redefining sacrifice as an active choice rather than a compulsory burden, we can approach our ambitions with clarity and intention, knowing that each step forward costs something, and that the cost, when aligned with our highest aspirations, is worth paying. Completing the first segment of this exploration, let's shift to a notion that runs counter to the desperate pursuit of romantic ideals. Stop chasing love. Modern culture is replete with images of love as a treasure that must be hunted, conquered, and won. We see stories of people bending over backward, altering their appearance or personality, and devising elaborate schemes just to find love. Yet, when you obsessively chase something, you often tighten your grip on a narrow vision of what you think you need, missing the broader opportunities for connection right before you. It's not that love is unimportant. Far from it. Human intimacy and companionship can be among life's richest experiences. The misconception lies in believing that love will solve all your problems, and that the absence of it equates to personal failure. When you hinge your identity on being in a relationship, you risk contorting yourself to fit someone else's expectations, or ignoring red flags because you're so fixated on not being alone. This approach can lead to toxic dynamics and a perpetual sense of inadequacy, as your happiness hinges on external validation. Paradoxically, real love often emerges when you are engrossed in living your best life, aligning your actions with your values and fostering your personal growth. Think about the times you've felt the most confident and fulfilled. It's usually when you're absorbed in a passion project, making a positive contribution, or simply enjoying an experience that resonates with your authentic self. In these states, you become naturally more open, and others are attracted to the genuine energy you radiate. Love found this way is generally healthier and more enduring because it's founded on mutual respect and a shared sense of life's purpose, rather than a mutual desperation to complete each other. From my own experiences, whenever I sought love out of a sense of emptiness, I found connections that matched that emptiness, fleeting, unfulfilling, and often punctuated by miscommunication. In contrast, when I shifted focus to my growth, learning new skills, diving into writing, and taking care of my mental and physical well-being, connections formed more organically. Interestingly, the love I discovered during these periods carried a sense of freedom, rather than the suffocating pressure of needing someone to fill a void. Ending the chase doesn't mean shutting the door on love. Rather, it means ending the frantic scramble. It involves creating a life rich with meaning so that if and when love arrives, it amplifies your contentment rather than acting as its sole source. You also become more discerning because you're not grasping at every potential partner who might momentarily soothe your loneliness. Instead, you have the space to evaluate whether a relationship genuinely aligns with your values and aspirations. This natural magnetism can feel like a revelation. Love that grows organically can be deeply nourishing instead of draining, supportive instead of restricting, and transformative rather than transactional. In short, by ceasing the chase, you step into a more balanced approach, one that recognizes love as a profound collaboration between two evolving individuals, rather than a prize to be claimed at any cost. Welcome to the second segment of these life-altering reflections. Having traversed insights on the comfort zone as a source of stagnation, the destructive power of rigid expectations, the impermanent nature of friendships, the necessity of sacrifice, and the fallacy of chasing love, let's pause and observe the emerging pattern. Each lesson encourages us to dismantle commonly held illusions. Where popular culture and even well-intentioned advice might urge us to seek ease, validation, or control, these principles call for embracing discomfort, releasing illusions, and finding wholeness within ourselves. In short, they pivot us from a life dictated by external markers to one that is directed by internal authenticity. This transition can be unsettling. Many of our routines and beliefs have been conditioned by society, traditions, or personal history. When someone insists that true growth comes from stepping away from comfort, or that letting go of certain friendships might be a natural process, it's understandable to feel resistance. After all, the structures we've built in our lives, career choices, social circles, relationship patterns, often feel like pillars of our very identity. To question them can be akin to questioning who we fundamentally are. Yet this introspection can be profoundly liberating. It allows us to see these pillars as fluid constructs that can evolve with us, rather than static monuments holding us in place. The lessons so far have laid a foundation for a more resilient, self-directed life. They show that while society promotes the illusion of quick fixes, real personal development is rarely a neat or swift process. It involves grappling with ambiguity, testing out new perspectives, and occasionally stumbling. But these stumbles are integral to growth. The discomfort that arises when a friendship fades or when we sacrifice immediate pleasures in pursuit of a loftier goal is not simply a cause for distress. It is a sign that we are venturing beyond what is familiar. True progress always demands some level of disruption, precisely because we are challenging what once felt safe. At this junction, it can be helpful to adopt what the Stoics call the inner citadel, a metaphor for cultivating an unassailable core of character and wisdom. This internal fortress is not about building walls to shut out the world, but about establishing a steady grounding so that the ups and downs of life have less power to throw us off course. Each lesson we integrate contributes a new layer of resilience, embracing the inevitability of change, whether in friendships, ambitions, or relationships, further fortifies that internal grounding, reminding us that life's fluidity need not be feared. Before delving into the remaining lessons, take a moment to reflect on the shifts you might have felt so far. Perhaps you've recalled moments where expecting too much led to heartbreak, or recognized how an excruciating sacrifice paved the way for a better chapter in your life. Maybe the advice to stop chasing love struck a chord, unveiling patterns you hadn't noticed before. All these reflections indicate a constructive unraveling of complacency. This process can be as exhilarating as it is daunting, but it holds the promise of a richer, more authentic existence. The upcoming lessons will further challenge your perceptions, urging you to question the majority's beliefs and cultivate the invaluable power of patience. It's time to confront the reality that the majority is often wrong. At first, this might feel abrasive. After all, humans are social creatures who rely on communal norms to survive. But conformity, while sometimes useful, can also stifle independent thinking. We've seen throughout history how popular opinion has sanctioned grave injustices, from ancient witch hunts to modern-day social prejudice. Yet, because the sheer number of voices touting a belief can be deafening, we are often coerced into accepting mainstream views without a thorough examination of their validity. Why do we succumb to this pressure? Fear of rejection, a desire for belonging, and the simplicity of aligning with a consensus can play significant roles. It's far easier to adopt a widely held stance than to question it, especially if doing so marks us as other. Yet real progress, both on a societal and personal level, frequently emerges from the questioning minority. When we dare to ask why things are done a certain way or if a particular practice remains relevant, we open the door to innovation and moral evolution. Conversely, when we default to believing that the crowd must be correct, we sabotage our capacity to think critically. In your personal life, this dynamic appears more often than you might realize. Perhaps your social group universally agrees on what a successful career looks like, often one with financial stability and a straightforward path toward promotions. If you feel drawn to something more unconventional, like starting a small social enterprise or becoming a freelance creative, those around you might try to dissuade you. Their intentions may be kind, stemming from concern for your well-being, but their perspective is still tethered to what the majority deems safe or respectable. By deferring to them, you risk denying yourself a path that, while initially more precarious, may be more fulfilling. My own experience with majority thinking occurred during a critical career crossroads. Nearly everyone around me insisted on a conventional 9-to-5 job, citing the security of a steady paycheck. When I decided to pursue a more entrepreneurial route, many voices declared it unwise. Admittedly, it was challenging in the early stages. I wrestled with self-doubt and the fear that perhaps everyone else was right. Yet, over time, the very risks the majority had warned me about cultivated resilience and creativity. I found solutions that wouldn't have emerged if I'd remained on a safer path. Looking back, my greatest breakthroughs were hatched precisely in moments where I questioned what everyone else took for granted. So how do we practice discerning thought in a world deluged with popular opinions? It begins with scrutinizing claims, not accepting them at face value. Research, read from diverse sources and question your assumptions. Ask yourself, who benefits from this narrative being perpetuated? Or, what evidence supports or refutes this standpoint? Engaging in conversations with people holding different perspectives can sharpen your critical thinking skills. Over time, you cultivate the ability to stand your ground, even if you stand alone. This doesn't mean rejecting everything mainstream by default. Rather, it's about adopting a stance of intellectual rigor and courage. When you do so, you reclaim your agency and ensure that your choices genuinely reflect your values rather than the herd's. Following on the heels of questioning societal norms, we arrive at a fundamental trait often underrated in our instant gratification culture. Patience is power. In a world saturated with quick fixes, express delivery, one-click shopping, binge-worthy entertainment, we're conditioned to get everything fast. Consequently, we expect fast results in personal development, relationships, and professional success as well. When these outcomes don't materialize on our timeline, we grow restless and disillusioned. Yet, consider the remarkable feats that only come to fruition through steady, patient effort. Seeds do not sprout into flowering plants overnight, and an artist does not master their craft in a single sitting. Olympians don't earn gold medals by dabbling sporadically in their sport. They train for years, often in relative obscurity, enduring plateaus, setbacks, and injuries. What binds these achievements is a dedication that sustains itself over time. Patience thus emerges as an essential ingredient in the pursuit of any noble endeavor, transforming trials and tribulations into stepping stones rather than insurmountable walls. Stoics view patience not as passive waiting, but as proactive endurance. It's about making a choice to persist despite discomfort or uncertainty. Interestingly, this principle extends beyond mere skill building or career aspirations. Patience also shapes our emotional landscape. If we possess the patience to sit with our feelings, be they sadness, anger, or despair, we often discover that they shift or reveal insights about our needs and desires. By contrast, a rushed reaction typically leads to impulsive decisions that we later regret. My own relationship with patience was tested when I wrote my first manuscript. Eager to become a published author, I labored intensively for weeks, polishing every sentence. After finally sending it to agents, I anticipated swift acceptance. Instead, rejections trickled in one by one. Initially, I was crushed, questioning my abilities and even considering abandoning the project altogether. However, those weeks of waiting eventually taught me the necessity of both humility and perseverance. I revised my work, sought feedback, and recognized the value of letting ideas marinate. When success finally arrived, it was sweeter because I knew I had endured the frustrations of repeated setbacks. The delayed gratification made the outcome more meaningful, and, importantly, my skill as a writer had deepened during that interval. Cultivating patience in everyday life can be deceptively challenging but is enormously rewarding. Start by reducing your reliance on immediate gratification. This could involve small steps, like cooking a meal from scratch rather than ordering takeout, or reading a thorough article instead of scanning a headline. Such deliberate choices build the mental muscle of patience. In the domain of personal growth, set realistic timelines for your goals and permit yourself to learn at a steady pace. If your progress is slower than you hoped, remember that mastery or meaningful change does not typically occur in a vacuum of quick success. It flourishes with consistent effort over an extended period. By actively practicing patience, you develop resilience against life's inevitable delays and setbacks. Rather than succumbing to frustration or quitting prematurely, you keep your vision intact and continue moving forward, an ability that often separates true accomplishment from wishful daydreaming. Let's take a broader view now, reflecting on how these principles, stepping out of comfort, dissolving unrealistic expectations, accepting impermanence in relationships, embracing sacrifice, ceasing the chase for external validation or love, questioning the majority and wielding patience, intersect to form a holistic philosophy of life. Each lesson addresses a different angle of human experience, but they share a common undercurrent: the call for conscious living over unconscious drifting. They prompt us to move away from passively inheriting narratives about success and happiness and move toward actively shaping our reality. Conscious living involves a kind of vigilant self-awareness. Instead of being tossed around by cultural tides, we examine the origins of our beliefs. We ask, do I really want this career, or was it imposed on me by societal expectations? Is my discomfort with solitude genuine, or is it the result of seeing romantic relationships as the ultimate prize? Am I hesitating to challenge mainstream norms because I'm truly convinced they're correct, or do I fear standing alone? Answering these questions honestly can reveal the subtle forces that guide our decisions. In practice, conscious living is less about achieving a state of eternal calm and more about developing a reliable compass that directs us through the chaos of existence. Crises and disappointments will still arise. Heartbreak, failure, and unexpected shifts remain inevitable components of the human journey. The difference is that, guided by these hard-earned insights, we begin to approach setbacks as opportunities for deeper understanding rather than as dire threats. If a plan fails, we reflect on whether it was anchored in realistic expectations or if we were lured by illusions of certainty. If a friendship drifts apart, we process the grief but also recognize the beauty of what was shared, letting go without bitterness. An added benefit of living consciously is the strength it brings to our relationships. When you're less frantic about your own insecurities and illusions, you can more readily show up for others. You become a calmer presence in times of crisis, a patient listener when someone needs to talk, and a more genuine friend or partner because you aren't weighed down by restless agendas. Ironically, by not chasing love obsessively, you might become more loving in the purest sense, capable of empathy without constantly demanding reciprocation or validation. However, achieving this lifestyle is not a quick switch. It's an ongoing process of learning and unlearning. There will be phases where you slip into old patterns, clinging to comfort or fighting against impermanence. The real transformation occurs when you recognize these slip-ups more quickly and adjust course accordingly. Over time, you may find that you spend less energy battling illusions and more energy creatively engaging with the real world, fueled by genuine curiosity rather than fear. The difference can be as palpable as stepping from a dimly lit room into the clear light of day. You see more possibilities, feel more agency, and discover a kind of grounded optimism that isn't fragile or naive, but is rooted in an authentic acceptance of life's unpredictability. It's also worth examining how these teachings stack up against other philosophical traditions. Much of what appears here resonates strongly with Eastern thought, particularly Buddhism, which highlights impermanence, detachment from cravings, and the acceptance of suffering as integral to human experience. Likewise, existentialist thinkers argue for finding personal meaning amid an inherently unpredictable universe, aligning with the idea that we can still choose our responses even if fate deals us difficult cards. While Stoicism specifically emphasizes virtuous living and the distinction between what we can and cannot control, these cross-cultural echoes attest to the universality of these insights. Why is it that so many traditions converge on similar truths? Possibly because they are grounded in timeless observations of human nature. Regardless of geography or era, people grapple with fear, desire, regret, ambition, and community. We have different social norms, technology, and cultural narratives, but the emotional and psychological core remains strikingly consistent. This suggests a kind of collective wisdom that transcends cultural boundaries, pointing to the same underlying principles. Life is transient, suffering arises from attachment and illusion, and inner peace is discovered through self-awareness, compassion, and acceptance of what is beyond our command. Such alignment across diverse philosophies can serve as a validation of these lessons' value. However, broad acceptance does not necessarily mean they are easily practiced. Indeed, the gap between intellectual understanding and lived application can be vast. People often find these concepts attractive on a theoretical level, but struggle to integrate them into day-to-day life, particularly when confronted with financial hardships, health issues, or romantic entanglements. This underscores the importance of consistent practice, whether through journaling, meditation, therapy, or other modes of reflective discipline. Even so, living by these insights does not guarantee a pain-free existence. Misfortune is not magically banished by adopting a stoic or mindful perspective. Instead, what shifts is our interpretation and response to that misfortune. Painful events, lost opportunities, ended relationships, or health scares still hurt, but they don't inevitably spiral into existential crises when we remember that life never promised everlasting stability. By continually training our minds to accept uncertainty and impermanence, we reduce the likelihood that pain will morph into prolonged suffering or bitterness. Over time, you may notice an interesting paradox. As you release your grip on specific outcomes, you start to function with a deeper sense of purpose. Releasing the exhausting need for everything to conform to your preference can free up mental and emotional bandwidth, allowing you to devote more energy to creative pursuits, meaningful connections, or contributing positively to your community. You become less fixated on winning at life by societal standards and more focused on discovering what truly aligns with your values and interests. In doing so, your external achievements may also improve, not because you forced them into being, but because you cultivated the clarity, discipline, and resilience that make success more likely. Another angle to explore is how these principles help us navigate modern technology, which both connects and isolates us in unprecedented ways. Social media platforms in particular amplify many illusions. The curated showcase of perfect bodies, perfect relationships, and perfect lifestyles perpetuates an endless loop of comparison. You might see photos of a friend's luxurious vacation and suddenly feel your own life is small, unexciting, or behind schedule. This environment makes it even harder to maintain perspective on comfort, expectation, friendship, love, and success. After all, if everyone else appears to be living an extraordinary life, you might conclude that comfort is a norm everyone but you enjoys, or that your expectations aren't high enough, or that your relationships pale in comparison. Yet, applying the lessons from Part 1 forces us to remember that social media is mostly a highlight reel, not an authentic reflection of life's twists and turns. When you see a friend's glamorous photos, keep in mind the sacrifices they might have made to afford that trip, the mundane routines omitted from the frame, and the possible stress they experienced that went unposted. The principle, "the majority is often wrong," resonates here, Just because many influencers push a narrative of perpetual glamour doesn't mean it's a balanced way to live. By questioning those narratives, you sidestep the trap of internalizing unrealistic ideals. The notion of patience also becomes crucial in a digital world that fuels impatience. The rapid turnover of news cycles, the instant gratification from likes, and the near-infinite scroll of content can fragment our attention and erode our capacity for sustained effort. Embracing patience in a digital context might mean limiting screen time or deliberately engaging in offline activities that demand focus and presence. It's a way to reclaim control over your mind, ensuring you're not perpetually distracted by fleeting digital stimuli. Moreover, social media can distort our sense of friendship impermanence. We might accumulate hundreds of online friends or followers, but real connections can remain shallow. The ephemeral nature of online relationships might make us cling more desperately to them, or ironically dismiss them altogether. By accepting that friendship is fluid, you approach social media interactions with a healthier mindset, staying open to meaningful bonds that can form even in a virtual space, while also recognizing that digital connections can fade quickly if not nurtured offline. Finally, the principle of stop chasing love applies powerfully in the context of dating apps and online matchmaking platforms. The abundance of choices can create a paradox of too many options, leading some to relentlessly swipe or message in hopes of finding the one. Yet, such behaviors often intensify anxiety and dissatisfaction. A more balanced approach would be to use these tools deliberately and with self-awareness, not as desperate hunts but as opportunities to connect with like-minded individuals. By focusing on living a fulfilling life outside the realm of swipes and likes, the love you do encounter, online or off, can feel more genuine and reciprocal. In essence, navigating the digital world through this philosophical lens can help you balance the convenience and connectivity offered by technology with the principles of authenticity, patience, and questioning the status quo. Rather than be swept away by digital illusions, you can integrate technology into your life as a resource, not as a measure of your worth or a proxy for real experiences. As Part 2 draws to a close, it's essential to consider how to actively integrate these concepts into your daily life. One common pitfall is to read or hear about transformative ideas, feel momentarily inspired, and then slip back into old patterns once the initial excitement diminishes. Lasting change demands consistent self-inquiry and disciplined practice. Each lesson shared so far, whether it's stepping beyond your comfort zone or recognizing that the majority can be wrong, must be continually revisited and tested in real-world scenarios. A helpful tool can be setting aside regular intervals for reflection. Some people prefer daily journaling, others opt for weekly reviews, and still others find value in meditation or guided introspection. Whatever the method, use this time to assess how you navigated challenges or opportunities. Did you settle back into seeking comfort when you felt uncertain? Did you cling to an expectation that a friend or colleague would behave in a certain way, leading to disappointment? Did you second-guess a decision because everyone else seemed to disagree? Such reflections help to crystallize these lessons, transforming them from abstract notions into lived wisdom. Another strategy is to create small experiments that allow you to practice each principle. For instance, to tackle the fear of leaving your comfort zone, you might commit to a weekly challenge, be it speaking in public, trying a new physical activity, or initiating a conversation with someone who intimidates you. For patience, choose a goal, a creative project, a skill to develop, or a physical training regimen, and resist the urge to look for shortcuts. Track your progress over weeks and months, noting how your mindset shifts when you embrace deliberate effort. When it comes to relationships, both friendships and love, recognize that authenticity requires consistent work. If you sense that a friendship is waning, resist the urge to force it to remain static. Instead, approach the situation with openness. Reach out if you genuinely wish to reconnect, but also grant yourself permission to accept that drifting apart might be the natural course. In romantic contexts, ensure you're not chasing love out of fear of solitude. Check in with yourself. Are you genuinely drawn to this person's qualities, or are you seeking reassurance to fill an internal void? Moreover, practicing sacrifice can start with budgeting your time. Perhaps you decide to wake up earlier to read or learn a new skill, sacrificing an hour of sleep or late-night relaxation. This small but deliberate act trains you to make more significant sacrifices aligned with loftier ambitions later on. By starting modestly, you build the muscle of self-discipline. Finally, keep in mind that questioning the majority does not mean contrarianism for its own sake. The goal is not to reject everything that's popular, but to examine whether popular opinions stand up to reason and evidence. If they do, accepting them is a conscious choice, rather than a passive surrender. If they don't, you preserve your sovereignty of mind by finding a viewpoint that aligns with your values and knowledge. Through these actionable steps, reflections, experiments, mindful sacrifices, and discernment, you transform these lessons into a living philosophy, one that grows stronger through practice rather than fading after the initial inspiration subsides. As we enter the final phase of this expansive reflection, let us revisit the overarching themes and contemplate how to unify these lessons into a cohesive way of being. The seeds planted thus far: acceptance of discomfort, release of rigid expectations, acknowledgement of fleeting friendships, commitment to sacrifice, the wisdom in ceasing the chase for external validation or romantic fulfillment, skepticism toward majority opinion, and the quiet strength found in patience, all point toward a life of greater authenticity and autonomy. By tying them together, we can forge a personal credo that resonates through our actions, relationships, and inner world. One of the greatest obstacles to living by these principles is the inertia of habit. Even if you intellectually grasp that your comfort zone can become a coffin, you may still feel the pull of safety in your day-to-day choices. Even if you genuinely believe that expectations breed misery, you might automatically set them for family members or friends. Thus, the real test arises in the mundane moments of life. When you're deciding whether to tackle an intimidating project, whether to adjust your perspective on an unfulfilled desire, or how to respond when a friend fails to show up as you hoped they would. Each choice, however small, becomes an opportunity to either reinforce old patterns or create new, liberating ones. An effective approach to embodying these lessons is to see them not as isolated commandments, but as interlinked facets of a broader philosophy. For instance, if you cultivate patience, you'll find it easier to break free from the habit of chasing love or constantly seeking validation, because you're more comfortable with slower, more organic processes. Accepting the impermanence of friendships dovetails with releasing expectations, as both hinge on recognizing life's unpredictability. As you exercise your critical thinking about majority opinions, you might find a renewed appreciation for stepping outside your comfort zone, since you're less tethered to prevailing norms. Integrating these lessons also reduces internal conflict. We often experience cognitive dissonance when we hold beliefs that clash with each other, like claiming we value personal freedom while simultaneously clinging to friendships that no longer serve us. By consolidating our guiding principles, we aim to reduce this friction, thereby living in closer alignment with a coherent ethical and existential framework. A sense of peace arises from knowing that the same underlying perspective informs every dimension of our life, from how we approach work to how we engage in relationships. Nevertheless, no matter how carefully you weave these insights into your life, setbacks will occur. You might face betrayal from a trusted companion, fail in a passion project, or experience heartbreak after you've vowed not to chase love. That's when these principles demonstrate their true power. They serve as a safety net, catching you when everything else falls apart, reminding you that discomfort is a catalyst for growth, that external events do not define your worth, and that patience is a virtue in navigating the twists and turns. In other words, the aim is not to live a problem-free existence, an impossible ideal, but to cultivate resilience, clarity, and a stable sense of self through life's challenges. To further solidify these lessons, let's examine a hypothetical scenario. Imagine you've decided to relocate to a new city for better career opportunities. Almost immediately, you face resistance from close friends, who worry you're abandoning them, job hunting setbacks where interviews fall flat, and moments of loneliness as you adjust to unfamiliar surroundings. In such a situation, your comfort zone is your coffin. Instead of returning to your old city at the first sign of hardship, you remain, understanding that discomfort might be the precursor to valuable growth. You use the new challenges to learn about the job market, expand your skill set, and build connections you never would have encountered otherwise. Expectation is the root of misery. You hoped the transition would be smooth, but it isn't. Rather than labeling yourself a failure, you recalibrate your perspective, acknowledging that changes rarely follow a perfect script. This shift prevents you from spiraling into despair when reality diverges from your plan. Friends are not forever. Some old friends fade from your daily life, no matter how strong the bond once was. Instead of forcing them to remain as central figures, you appreciate the role they played in your past and remain open to forging new friendships in your new environment. You avoid resentment by understanding that relationships evolve. Sacrifice is essential. The relocation entails sacrificing a familiar routine, financial stability, and proximity to loved ones. Yet these sacrifices are intentional, made in service of broader ambitions, like finding more rewarding work or diversifying your life experiences. As you settle in, the discomfort of these losses is balanced by the excitement of new possibilities. Stop chasing love. If you find yourself in a new city craving companionship, you resist the urge to scramble for it, letting connections develop more organically. You devote energy to personal growth and community involvement rather than frantically searching for a romantic partner to fill a void. The majority is often wrong. Many people may have told you this move was reckless or naive. By critically evaluating their concerns, you realize that they're rooted in fear or conventional thinking. While acknowledging potential risks, you trust your own reasoning and instincts, steering clear of the majority's narrow viewpoint. Patience is power. You accept that flourishing in a new city will take months, perhaps even years. Instead of expecting immediate results, you pace yourself, networking consistently, adjusting your budget, exploring the city's opportunities one at a time. This patience ensures you don't abandon your new life prematurely due to unrealistic timelines. In this hypothetical example, each lesson weaves into the narrative, demonstrating how they fortify you against giving up too soon or settling for less. By actively applying these principles to real-life challenges, both monumental and everyday, you learn that personal development isn't a grand event but a string of smaller, consistent choices. The new city, rather than being a source of isolation or regret, becomes a classroom that tests and refines the insights you've chosen to adopt. Consider now the broader societal impact when individuals adopt this philosophy. Picture a community where enough people value stepping out of their comfort zones, thereby fueling innovation and fostering an environment where experimentation is encouraged. Artists could explore audacious concepts, entrepreneurs might launch ventures that address social challenges, And educators could revolutionize teaching methods without being stifled by fear of failure. When fewer people cling to static expectations, it opens space for unconventional career trajectories, flexible family arrangements, and alternative definitions of success. This community also becomes more compassionate, as people understand that missteps and obstacles are part of the growth cycle rather than moral failings. In such a society, friendships transform from rigid institutions to fluid alliances built on mutual respect and shared experiences. The stigma of a drifting friendship diminishes, replaced by a collective acceptance that individuals evolve. Sacrifice becomes less daunting, too, because it's normalized as a stepping stone toward collective goals, be it social reform, environmental sustainability, or cultural renaissance. People don't balk at the idea that some might choose lower-paying jobs if they serve a higher communal purpose, for the priority shifts to a broader sense of well-being rather than individual material gain. Regarding love, a cultural shift away from desperate chasing could yield healthier, more supportive relationships. If both partners come together out of genuine compatibility rather than fear of loneliness, their bond likely stands on more stable ground. Moreover, in a community that questions majority opinions, misguided social norms lose their grip instead of forcing themselves to fit outdated molds, like rigid gender roles or materialistic definitions of worth. People collectively redefine norms in ways that reflect evolving values and knowledge. Patience in this environment becomes a communal virtue. Public projects like infrastructure improvements, scientific research, or arts initiatives are understood as long-term investments. If the population shares a commitment to enduring effort, they support policies and institutions that value slow but substantial progress. For instance, instead of rushing to show immediate superficial results, they prioritize building robust foundations that will serve future generations. Consequently, the society might look beyond election cycles and short-term profit margins, aligning more closely with long-range visions that include sustainability, justice, and human flourishing. Yet the shift to such an ideal community is not without friction. Societies, much like individuals, resist change. Entrenched power structures benefit from the status quo. Marketing campaigns thrive on convincing people that comfort is the pinnacle of achievement, that every desire should be immediately satisfied, and that consensus equals correctness. Nonetheless, if enough individuals embody these lessons, cultural momentum can lean toward deeper transformation. Whether on a grand scale or within small communities, like a company, a neighborhood, or a family, each person's internal evolution resonates outward. The combination of independent thought, acceptance of life's impermanence, and a collective dedication to patient progress becomes not just a personal ethic, but a societal blueprint for growth, resilience, and compassion. In weaving these reflections into a final tapestry, it is crucial to revisit the original statement that this is not a gentle invitation, but rather a stark, confrontational wake-up call. Many self-help philosophies champion optimism and positivity, encouraging you to avoid negativity at all costs. While there is nothing inherently wrong with maintaining a positive outlook, realism often provides a more stable foundation. Life includes death, gain includes loss, and hope must acknowledge despair to be authentic. Stoic wisdom, in particular, does not ask us to dwell in sadness or cynicism, but to remove the rose-tinted glasses and see life as it truly is, unpredictable, impermanent, and challenging, yet filled with opportunities for profound growth and wonder. The lessons summarized here aim to equip you with the internal scaffolding to navigate this paradoxical terrain. They may feel harsh because they confront cherished illusions. Nobody likes to think of their comfort zone as a place where their potential goes to die, or to imagine that friendships, once vital, could have an expiration date. Yet, by acknowledging these realities instead of denying them, We gain the power to adapt. When you face a daunting challenge, for example, you recall that growth thrives on discomfort, and you press on rather than flee. When disappointment strikes, you remember that rigid expectations often set you up for suffering, so you adjust and move forward with resilience. Moreover, these lessons do not stand apart from genuine compassion or empathy. Quite the opposite. They can deepen our capacity to care. When you stop chasing love, you learn to see and accept people for who they are, rather than projecting fantasies onto them. When you value sacrifice, you also cultivate gratitude for others who sacrifice for your well-being. Questioning the majority fosters open-mindedness, encouraging you to hear minority voices that might hold invaluable perspectives. And patience, perhaps the most understated virtue of them all, grants you the grace to support others in their journeys, even when their progress isn't instantaneous. Indeed, a hallmark of maturing in this philosophy is how it alters your relationships, not just romantic ones, but also family bonds, friendships, and even professional alliances. You might find yourself more attuned to subtle shifts in other people's lives, noticing their discomfort and growth edges, reflecting back to them their own potential. You become less reactive, more thoughtful, and incrementally better at guiding conversations toward clarity rather than conflict. This deepening empathy, paradoxically, grows from a place of accepting life's harsher truths. Knowing that everyone is subject to impermanence and that everyone struggles with expectations fosters a sense of shared humanity. Ultimately, the direct tone of these teachings serves a purpose. In a society that bombards us with illusions, quick fixes, fairy tale endings, and superficial images of success, a bracing jolt can be the most effective antidote. These principles are not about tearing you down, but about liberating you from misconceptions that keep you stuck. The path from false security to genuine freedom may be fraught with discomfort, but it is a journey worth undertaking if you aspire to live authentically and fully. Yet even the most profound insights can fade if not continually reinforced. Human memory is malleable, and societal pressures are relentless. It can be easy, for instance, to read about the importance of stepping beyond comfort, only to slip back into complacency when confronted with real anxiety. Thus, it becomes critical to incorporate practices that sustain these lessons in the long run. Perhaps you designate an area in your home, a writing desk, a meditation cushion, or a cozy reading nook, where you regularly revisit these concepts. Or maybe you form a small group of like-minded friends, meeting monthly to discuss experiences and challenges related to these truths. Remember, transformation often unfolds slowly. Expecting quick, sweeping change can paradoxically reinforce the same illusions you're trying to shed. A useful analogy is learning a new language. At first, you only know a few words. Gradually, you grasp grammar and build vocabulary. Eventually, you can hold fluent conversations and even dream in that language. Integrating Stoic-inspired or mindfulness-based perspectives follows a similar progression. Initially, you might only recall fragments of wisdom when feeling stressed or disappointed. Over time, the lessons become second nature, guiding you effortlessly in daily decisions and emotional responses. Acknowledging missteps along the way is also part of the process. You might find yourself revisiting an old destructive habit, such as chasing romantic validation during a low point. When you catch yourself, avoid spiraling into shame or self-criticism. Instead, treat it as a moment to reaffirm your commitments. Ask, what drew me back to this behavior? How can I better respond the next time I'm tempted by it? By framing the mistake as a learning opportunity rather than a personal failure, you maintain momentum in your growth journey. These practices are particularly beneficial in major life transitions, whether it's starting or leaving a job, moving to a new location, entering or exiting a relationship, or navigating health issues. Each transition shakes up your established routines and can either trigger anxiety or open a gateway to reinvention, depending on your mindset. By having these lessons readily accessible in some form, notes, journal entries, or mental reminders, you can lean on them when the ground beneath you shifts. In time, you may find that you become a living example of these ideas, quietly influencing people around you. Rather than preaching, you model resilience, authenticity, and open-mindedness in your daily choices. When others notice and inquire about the source of your equanimity, you can share these concepts. In doing so, you become a ripple in the broader pond of cultural change, demonstrating how ancient wisdom and modern insights can unite to form a robust, life-affirming philosophy. Even if you only impact a handful of people directly, the cumulative effect of many individuals living out these truths can be substantial, a testament to the possibility that real transformation begins within each one of us and reverberates outward. At this point, you might wonder how all these ideas hold up in times of acute crisis. After all, it's one thing to reflect on them in moments of calm and quite another to apply them during a personal emergency such as the sudden loss of a loved one, a severe financial blow, or a debilitating health diagnosis. Indeed, crises test the resilience of any philosophy, but they also underscore why confronting tough truths proactively can be so beneficial. When disaster strikes, many people scramble for coping mechanisms they have not cultivated. In their desperation, they might grasp at denial, blame, or toxic forms of escapism. By contrast, those who have wrestled with discomfort, impermanence, and the fallibility of expectations beforehand are better prepared. While they still feel pain or grief, their worldview accommodates hardship as a natural, albeit difficult, part of life. This perspective doesn't eliminate the emotional intensity of the situation, but it offers a framework for enduring it with a measure of composure and dignity. It's important here to distinguish resilience from stoic numbness. Adopting a stoic mindset does not mean shunning all emotion, contrary to the caricature. It means recognizing that emotions are signals, not dictators. In times of crisis, a wave of sadness, anger, or fear may wash over you. By acknowledging these emotions, you can process them instead of letting them rule your decisions. This approach often leads to clearer thinking, which is particularly valuable in an emergency. Moreover, the lesson that friends are not forever can be paradoxically comforting during crises. You understand that relationships come and go, so if certain friends fade away during your challenging period, you are less prone to resentment. Instead, you focus on the connections that remain solid, cherishing their support without harboring grudges against those who cannot offer it. Sacrifice, too, becomes more meaningful in these times. Maybe you must sacrifice a career goal to care for a family member, or your personal freedom to manage a health crisis. Recontextualizing sacrifice as part of life's natural ebb and flow, rather than an unfair penalty, fosters acceptance and even gratitude in the midst of adversity. Patience takes on renewed significance as well. Healing, whether physical, emotional, or financial, rarely unfolds on a timetable that aligns with our preferences. The power of patience allows you to pace yourself through recovery, celebrating incremental improvements rather than feeling crushed by the magnitude of the journey ahead. If you find yourself questioning why things didn't go as planned, recall that expectation is the root of misery, and life seldom matches our most detailed roadmaps. Accepting this undeniable reality can unlock a stoic sort of calm, enabling you to navigate complexities with far less emotional whiplash. Crises, then, become litmus tests for how deeply you've integrated these lessons. While no philosophy will shield you entirely from life's storms, a well-practiced set of guiding principles can serve as a lighthouse. It reminds you that each wave, no matter how towering, eventually crashes and recedes, leaving room for reconstruction and renewal. And perhaps most importantly, It reaffirms that within the heart of turmoil lies an opportunity for profound transformation. As we near the conclusion of this extended exploration, let's reflect on how to carry these lessons forward in a manner that honors your individuality. A pitfall in adopting any philosophy is turning it into dogma, a rigid, one-size-fits-all system. But these teachings, drawn from Stoic insights and enhanced by modern reflections, are meant to be adaptive. They should serve as a foundation on which you build, not as an inflexible script to be followed to the letter. Each person's journey is shaped by unique talents, challenges, cultural backgrounds, and personal histories. Take your comfort zone as your coffin, for example. While for one individual it might mean mustering the courage to perform on stage, for another it might be engaging in earnest self-expression in a family environment that discourages vulnerability. Similarly, while "Stop Chasing Love" might resonate strongly with someone who repeatedly jumps from one brief relationship to another, it could look very different for someone navigating the complexities of a decade-long marriage. The principle remains the same. Love flourishes when we stop demanding it conform to our fantasies, but its application is endlessly varied. Embrace the autonomy to experiment with these concepts. If you find journaling daily about your sacrifices beneficial, do so. If you prefer to reflect on impermanence through minimalist living, regularly decluttering your life of possessions and commitments that no longer serve you, that's equally valid. The key is identifying methods of engagement that you can sustain over time. It's better to adopt a single practice consistently than to sample a dozen sporadically. Depth rather than breadth nurtures lasting change. Moreover, remember to extend compassion to yourself. We all stumble. Even the most seasoned Stoic can get swept up in public opinion or succumb to impatience. The measure of growth is not a flawless record, but a pattern of returning to these principles with increasing conviction and dexterity. Each time you recognize a lapse and correct your course, you strengthen the mental circuitry that aligns with these lessons. Over months and years, these corrections accumulate, shaping you into someone who embodies resilience, authenticity, and discernment. Finally, be aware of the subtle transformations that can occur when you fully internalize these truths. You might discover that your definition of success evolves from status-driven achievements to meaningful contributions. You might find it easier to form relationships with people who challenge and inspire you rather than those who offer mere convenience. You could become more at ease with life's unpredictable nature, noticing how each twist or turn unveils fresh perspectives you would have missed had everything proceeded exactly as planned. In essence, these 7 lessons aren't merely intellectual exercises. They are living seeds that can grow into a garden of integrated wisdom if tended patiently and sincerely. Thus, the invitation is to continue the journey. Read, question, and adapt. Let the lessons shape you, but also let your experiences refine the lessons. Over time, you become an active participant in the ongoing evolution of these truths. When all is said and done, these insights serve to liberate you from illusions, reconnect you with the raw pulse of life, and guide you to a horizon where growth, empathy, and authenticity converge. We've traversed a vast landscape of ideas, each designed to dismantle comfortable myths and provoke meaningful reflection. It's fitting to close by revisiting the bold assertion at the very start: everything you think you know about life is wrong. At first glance, this might have seemed exaggerated or even rude, but in the context of these lessons, it serves as a stark reminder that much of what we assume about happiness, success, love, and social norms can be traced back to inherited beliefs that might not withstand rigorous scrutiny. By daring to question these assumptions, you position yourself to discover a more authentic way of living. In the end, this is a call to action, rather than a mere intellectual exercise. The tragedies of anxiety, depression, disconnection, and aimless living loom large in modern society. Many people drift through their days feeling that something essential is missing, yet they can't pinpoint what it is. That missing piece is often the courage to face life's tougher truths, to accept that comfort can stifle growth, that not every dream will pan out as desired, and that genuine fulfillment arises from aligning one's actions with deeper values rather than short-lived pleasures or societal benchmarks. Of course, none of this implies that you must become an ascetic, renounce all possessions, or live in unrelenting austerity. The point is rather to wield discernment, to know when comfort is preventing growth, to understand when you're placing unrealistic demands on life, to recognize relationships that have run their course, to embrace sacrifice as an active choice, to channel your energies into building a life so meaningful that you don't have to chase love, to question groupthink, and to exercise patience in the face of life's volatility. In adopting this stance, you become a steward of your own existence, not merely a passenger on someone else's ship. Ultimately, the journey outlined here does not promise an absence of pain. Heartache, setbacks, and disappointment will inevitably appear, often arriving unannounced. What shifts, however, is your relationship to these experiences. Armed with the ability to view adversity as an invitation rather than a condemnation, you cultivate resilience. And with resilience comes the freedom to truly engage with life on your terms, exploring, creating, connecting, and learning without being paralyzed by illusions or dread. Now, as this extended reflection draws to a close, the final word is yours to speak. Will you take these lessons as theoretical musings, or will you integrate them as guiding truths that shape your attitudes and choices? The baton is passed to you to decide if your comfort zone remains a coffin or becomes a launching pad, if your friendships can be cherished without clinging, if your sacrifices become avenues to greater fulfillment, and if you will dare to practice patience in a culture that values speed above all else. In making these decisions, you step into the realm of conscious living. There, the harsh realities and radiant possibilities of life stand side by side, each beckoning you to partake in the vibrant tapestry of existence. Live boldly, remain curious, and let these lessons be your trusted compass in the grand adventure of life. Reflecting on everything we've discussed, it's clear that the most profound truths in life aren't always the easiest to accept, yet they're incredibly freeing once embraced. Learning to step outside your comfort zone, letting go of outdated expectations, and finding genuine purpose are the real keys to lasting happiness and authentic success. I believe each of us has a unique story of transformation waiting to unfold. What's yours? Drop a comment below and share your experiences or challenges. Let's start a conversation and help each other live more boldly, authentically, and meaningfully. Don't forget to subscribe and become part of our community dedicated to exploring powerful insights and growing stronger together.